Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 36th audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble channel series. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SG Anon. On this particular channel, one of the things we really strive to do is to bring the voices of we the people together across all ideological divides, boundary lines, artificial divisions that they have created out there for us and that they used certainly against us during the COVID pandemic of 2019, 2020, and which the same tactics and techniques, of course, have been on display in an amplified form ever since. Conversations change the world. And the first, I think, moving towards that new world has to come from a point of agreement. The first movement, if you will, has to come from a point of understanding and agreement. And I think a great many of the people, certainly in the NATO Western world, are beginning to coalesce around the positive and the negative aspects that are true in their societies, namely that we're all a lot alike and that we're not really all that different culturally or even ideologically at the end of the day. Excuse me. And yet we have been sort of co-opted by a bureaucratic machine that is self-serving with its own bloodlust and is very hungry for power and is not shy from oppressing any of us, we the people, and suppressing the voice of we the people across the entire Western world and the world at large. Today I have with us Mr. Dale Richardson and Ms. Kaysha, both of which are involved in something called the Karis Project. The Karis Project, loosely stated, is a humanitarian project that is designed to heal families through restoration and the obtainment of justice. The Karis Project utilizes things such as engineering sciences and others to forward that end, and is involved in the fight against child sex trafficking and also raising support for the January 6th prisoners, as well as as well as preparing evidence packages for patriots out there that have been harmed by the mRNA experimental shots. The Karis Project is essentially, encompassed doing the same work that a great many patriots out there are attempting to do in their own way and in their own time. It's my honor to have you both here today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Well, it's truly an honor, and I guess I'd like to, open up the floor, Mr. Richardson, if I could, and just get into a little bit of background, your personal background, how you came to the engineering world, and what brought you to the fight. We talked a little bit off air prior to this, but if you don't mind to just maybe sum it up for the audience, what got you and Ms. Kaysha into this battle at this level?
All right. Yeah, I was actually doing some work for some dental clinics, and I was doing some research during the course of my degree as COVID was starting. And so I went in and looked at some of the guidelines for the reopening of the dental clinics, and I looked at them and I was like, this doesn't work. And I was sitting around with a mechanical engineer and a couple other technologists. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And I talked to my dentist. I says, don't do anything until I look this through because you can't make them work. And then started asking questions. I got the runaround. I was like, this is concerning. So I kept pushing for it. No one had any paperwork to justify why this was presented in the manner that it was. And then I continued to dig and went back and found the initial guidance that was issued by the CDC and understood that they made a critical mistake. And what I thought was a mistake, I then found out was deliberate because it was popping up in every jurisdiction in Canada and the United States that I looked at in an identical manner. And, it took away a multiplier that was put on there that could change the times, unbeknownst to the users. And so it would create a bunch of unknown failures and an unknown number of systems that couldn't be accounted for. And this is like HVAC systems. I was specifically looking at a dental clinic setting, but it could be used in hospitals and other areas. And so you could spread a biological weapon and make it look like a random outbreak. And that's a no-no, right? Like, and then they, started to go with it, took it to the RCMP in Canada, which are like the FBI, and they refused to investigate after they opened criminal complaints, took them to court. Then I got arrested by the RCMP and strapped to a bed and drugged against my will and interrogated. My daughter got arrested too, and she got taken to separate facility and interrogated under the guise of COVID. And so at that point, I got decimated and lost everything because this goes all the way up to the top, and it shielded both Trudeau and Biden from all their dirty tactics, and it was the first step of the pandemic response. It should have shut it down in the spring of 2020, but they had other plans.
Remarkable. Targeted by a rogue administration. Sort of exactly along the same lines as the January 6th prisoners of war here in the United States of America. Ms. Kaysha, is your Mr. Richardson essentially stated that you were also arrested and taken to a facility and questioned and things like that. Is that the moment in time where you sort of came to this global conversation for rights and freedom?
Well, I think I grew up understanding that to some degree that there was a problem in our judicial system because of the things some of the things I had experienced growing up. However, I didn't know to what degree. My father raised me to be a very someone by the book that just minds their own business and likes the structure and order. And so, I followed the law and I don't even have speeding tickets. I just, did my own thing. And thought that if you did your own thing, that you would generally be fine. And I even aspired to work for the government one day, which I eventually did. The facility my dad's actually talking about that I was taken to and persecuted was the very government facility that I worked at, the provincial prison and hospital for the criminally and mentally insane that I was employed at, is where I was taken and persecuted. And the steps along the way, because I worked there, that we had learned in the facility what certain steps that were going to be taken against certain people in certain situations. And I had a feeling things would get bad when we started speaking out for truth, because as soon as we made the reports, I mean, I made an official OH&S complaint, which is the same as OSHA laws in the United States, and instantly started getting threats from my employer and pushback. And at that point, I started to think to myself, okay, like things are probably going to get bad. I didn't know this bad, but I had a feeling it was going to be bad.
Well, I think when we look at our historic examples, it is sort of a common theme throughout history that those who stand up against the rogue, power-hungry behavior of individuals at all levels of power in any society, things are usually worse before they're better with those particular groups of people. But it is those groups, those swaths of we the people throughout history that I think have maintained and forced the issue of freedom, self-determination, sovereignty, and control over one's own body and one's own direction here in the world, that gave rise, I think, to the Enlightenment thinkers and the foundation of the United States of America in its truest sense, right? And we know here, certainly here in the States, that our government has been co-opted for a very long time, at least since the U.S. Civil War, perhaps even prior to that, depending on which metric you'd like to use. And so that sort of ties me into a question that I have for the both of you. I don't get a chance to do a lot of different broadcasts with individuals that are across that nation state boundary line to our neighbors, and our neighbors to the north. And so from being able to speak from a Canadian perspective, how has this process sort of shown out the weakness in the Canadian system, if I may ask, Mr. Richardson, because we've seen here in the United States of America the weakness in the bureaucracy, and especially in the ability of any sort of lawful elected body to sort of police its own. It has the same exposure been happening here. We said the weaponization of the RCMP. How does that look from a Canadian's point of view?
I mean, if you read the Declaration of Independence, you'll see very quickly everything that went wrong there's happening here. Canada is being used to fight like a proxy war against the United States, much like it did, because you can get away with far more here in Canada as you can in the United States. Most Canadians right now understand they would kill to have the U.S. Constitution and the protections that you guys have, because our system is designed by criminals, and it's just really obvious right now because a lot of the times they force you to go to the people that you complain to go get help. It's like a woman having to go to a rapist and say, please convict yourself. It's nonsense. And then on top of that, like we have a portion of our Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is like our Bill of Rights, but says that we can limit your rights. And that's nonsense because previously to that, it says we acknowledge the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Well, if you do that, then you should acknowledge that we all have the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because our rights come from God. So this is some kind of contradiction, and you can tell that this same, I mean, force that was infiltrating the U.S. government is here in Canada, but with to a larger degree. Like they say, if 98% of if Washington is corrupt, then 99.9% of Ottawa is corrupt, right? It's gross here. Um, so much tyranny, and what I understood now is that they use different jurisdictions to help overthrow our liberties. And Biden and his administration used Canada a lot to conceal a lot of the things that they couldn't get away with in the United States. And for one of that is like the handing over those bioweapons to the Chinese. That would have just not been able to be possible on US soil, but they did it through Canada. So a lot of cooperation between the two countries by criminals to overthrow our countries. That filth needs to stop.
Amen. Miss Kaysha, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Well, I agree with my father and everything that he stated. You know, I'm actually I'm born in Canada, of course, but I'm an American Indian, and I currently am a resident of Texas. I've been here the last 4 years, so to speak, and just that short time frame that I've actually lived here, uh, I've experienced the power of being able to enforce the Constitution and just how important that is. And a lot of, I think, people have forgotten how important that is because they quite frankly don't know anything else. Uh, but to just simply grow up in the province to the north, Canada, you understand, you know, the suffocation of socialism and tyranny and just how detrimental it is to your everyday life and your family and home. And it seems kind of unfathomable for a lot of people who are listening or even living in the United States. Oh, how could Canada be such a dark and desolate place? But when all you know is freedom, it becomes almost uh, I guess, dealt down to you.
Indeed. And I think that's one of the things we're revisiting as a civilization ad hoc, at large across the entire NATO West, the entirety of the Commonwealth realms, Western Europe, Central Europe. I think there is this severe push, an inarguable push coming from those transnational elitist classes, those UN agencies, membership organizations, right, that are essentially attempting to erase and rewrite the idea of sovereignty, the idea of freedom, the idea of self-control and self-governance here in the world. And sort of to that end, if I can ask you both, this project that you have came about, it sounds like as a result of the very obvious global tyranny grab that began in 2019, 2020, has accelerated, like putting gas on the fire, if you will, over the last 3 to 4 years. And so with the Karis Project, what are some of the key components of that project that it's important for patriots, I think, out there to be aware of?
Yes. I'll start on this a little bit because what the first response when I exposed the treasonous activity was to steal my youngest daughter, who's now 5. Her name is Karis. My daughter decided to name the project after her little sister, who she hasn't seen for almost 4 years now, because these people are criminals to no end. And so my daughter was like, well, I can't have this happen, so let's start this. And as a father, I was like, I have to support you in doing what's right. And so now what we do is I've compiled evidence packages that demonstrated the first step of the pandemic response was laid on the foundation of high treason in Canada and treason in the United States in violation of Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution. And then every step after that, and demonstrated how the courts and law enforcement were working in lockstep with other agencies in Canada and the United States, and started to compile other court hearings as well to demonstrate that these things are wrong. And so I put together packages for Canada and then 46 of the 50 states. And I'm going to be updating them to the most recent information. And there's a federal package as well. It has evidence from like a lot of the experts like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. David Martin, Dr. Paul Alexander, Dr. Makis, and all these long lists of experts as well. So that they show from the beginning at the engineering controls at the first step that a biological weapon was distributed. They had a delivery system, they had the weapons, and at each stage they did it wrong to spread disease, to then now give the second biological weapon, which was the vaccine. Well, I mean, it's an experimental drug, it's not a vaccine. And then the excess deaths that you would expect to have after unleashing a biological weapon. And so this is a done deal and sealed and delivered. And then after that, on top of that, we've now done petitions for redress of grievances, first in the state of Michigan, then the state of Texas, and now here in Alberta. And now it's up to the people. We're calling on all the people to start pressuring your government and your elected officials to bring that forth to the floor. Because the right of the petition for redress of grievances goes back to the British parliamentary system, which we all descended from. And when that petition goes in, it is the obligation of every member to bring that to the floor. And when that grievance is treason and slavery, which is what human trafficking is, every one of them is obligated to bring it, because no government has the right to enslave people. No government has the right to overthrow their own country, nor another country. If you're going to war, the people have to consent. There was no consent, and no government official has the right to say no when it comes to sitting down and saying, you're taking away my country and turning us into China. Hell no. So this is what we're doing, and helping. And Kaysha can explain a little bit more, but this is where we're at right now. So we want the public support.
Yes. So, sorry, I'm a little bit sick still. So as everything my father stated is correct. I started the Karis Project and named it after my sister because she, you know, uh, I guess this is where that's to get to people who are and being censored or and obviously discussions I wanted to give a voice to those people because legacy media and everyone else is not giving the truth. We're not getting an accurate depiction of what is genuinely going on in society and in life right now, and just exactly how bad it is, and exactly how well of an oiled machine this is. People are not getting the proper picture. I likewise wanted to show to my sister Karis, in the event that it ever comes across her eyes, that we do in fact still love her and are fighting for her, and others just like her. And that would give her some peace until we can meet again, which is the promise I give to her at the end of every podcast. which I expect to fulfill in this lifetime and the next. That being said, the purpose of what we're doing is trying to create a network of communications and stories and situations so that people can get the full picture and also get the help that they need to overcome the burdens that they're dealing with and the closure that not only is this happening, but we understand what you're going through and we're here to help you through it. You don't have to feel alone. Most of the people who have gone through what we went through are experiencing a very isolated and lonely experience. And we understand that everyone is being isolated in order to prevent these problems from being resolved. And so
I do apologize. We may be experiencing an audio interruption on this end. In this case, I apologize. The last thing we heard was that you were putting together an information sort of
Like I was.
I apologize profusely, ladies and gentlemen. We are experiencing some significant technical interference on this end. Mr. Richardson, Miss Kaysha, if you can hear me, we did experience an interruption on this end. I apologize. We are still experiencing the interruption on this end.
They were making unconstitutional changes to the United States elections on the back of treasonous activity, and they suppressed it to allow Biden to be installed and remove Trump. That's way off base, right? That kind of nonsense can't happen. So we want to get people together working across borders because they worked across borders to rob us of our freedom. We need to work across the borders to take back our countries, because if we go down here now, the entire world goes down. The line in the sand has to be drawn here now, and we're making a call to action. And we're also working with families, because restoring families is the only way we go forward. This is how we got here in the first place, by the destruction of the family. You go back, our societies are very, very similar. And our families were independent, they were strong, our nations were strong. This is why we developed a good friendship. And if we had war, we would hold off the entire world working together if they tried to invade us by conventional means. So what do they have to do? They had to destroy our families. They had to creep into Canada because we don't got a lot of people, but they can put a lot of people here so that they can start pistoning your cornflakes across the border and send in people from the north and the south. And we're not having that, because we ain't turning into China, and we don't want you guys to do that either. So I think it's time that we need to take a stand together and start educating our people on how to take back our countries, because we don't need that nonsense here. And Biden and Trudeau, they need to go right now.
Amen, my friend. 250 million Americans would agree that Biden needed to go on the 21st of January, 2021. That being said, I do apologize. We experienced an audio interruption, excuse me, on this end. And I wanted to just circle back to what Ms. Kaysha was saying just a moment ago to make sure that the audience has a clear continuity. And I do apologize for the folks out there. You said that we're putting together an information, essentially a constellation of information packets, a campaign that allows people a turnkey system to move into action, taking back their countries, their communities. Is that the correct assessment of what was being said a moment ago prior to our interruption?
go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. We're actually working with the Million Man Charges in Canada, the Operation Restoration in the United States, and we're working with anybody who's got skin in the game. And if you're in Canada or United States, you got skin in the game because they're turning our countries into China, and that can't happen. So we're creating what is, an information network and a gigantic net because treason is a crime of conspiracy, and we're all victims of treason. So everybody who's being harmed by our governments can now connect to this information and bring it forward and connect yourself to every other person to overwhelm and break down their system and make sure these dirty criminals and traitors who are also involved in raping and killing children can be taken to task, because I don't like traitors, and I certainly don't like people who rape and kill children, right? That is everywhere I look. These people are doing this filth, and that's an abomination. And you need to get what's coming to you, right? That's way off base. You gone too far. To hell with that, right? Sorry, that makes me angry.
Indeed, my friend. And I think as the world is waking up to the realization of what you just described, a deep spiritual imbalance has developed, and it can only be righted by the service of justice and the healing of our families, and a return, I think, to a godly way of life, a Christ-focused, godly way of life here in the world. And that's what we over here at QMP certainly are all about. To close this off today, I wanted to ask really quick, first off, what is the best way for people to contact your organization, support your work, perhaps share their story? What is the best way to do so?
Go first,
So,
Kaysha.
oh, okay. So if people want to get in contact with the Karis Project, they can find us on Twitter, on Rumble. I think we're also on Odyssey. We're on Facebook. You can reach out to us on pretty much so many platforms. We do occasionally upload videos to TikTok. We are probably gonna uh, start up on YouTube again. Um, of course, that got taken down. Speaking, having doctors and stuff come on and share good information. But if you want to reach out to us, you can also contact us at Unity at DSR Karis, Karis consulting.com, to request for more information on how you can file complaints, or if you would like to come on this show and share your story. That's always fine. But the quickest way to get a hold of us is probably going to be Twitter. The DMs are open, and you're always, we reply quite quickly, or reasonably, I would say, to our inquiries.
Yeah, there's also a contact form on the website that you just had up there. There's a donor box to give, send, go. We also have merchandise for people to purchase to help support, or if you need any of the engineering services or the forensic services, by all means, we're happy to provide those services. And for the packages, these things are free. They do cost money, so we're asking for people to support us. Obviously we have products for sale, but if you don't fit in that way, you just want to donate, by all means do so, because we're doing this for the people. Um, we can make a lot of money after doing business with people, but we can't get that happening while we're getting killed, right? And so we need to stop the bleeding. We need to get the justice. We need to get the help for the people who are being murdered by criminals who are masquerading it as government. And so this is what we want: justice. And then we can all move forward once justice is being served. And this is the biggest reason, because Karis, the name of my little daughter, is the Greek word for grace and divine influence on the heart and a divine gift. And through everything that we went through, it's only the mercy of God that kept us alive for this time. And I believe that God kept us alive to bring this information for the benefit of his people, because God loves his children and he doesn't want them to be killed. And we all need to come together so that we can stand up. And when we stand up here in Canada, United States, then the world will follow suit. We have to be the lead in this fight.
Could not have said it any better. And I, for one, am extremely grateful for the work that both of you have been doing and for the journey and experiences that you have lived in order to share with us the true nature of the reality at play in our world. My sincerest well wishes and sympathies to you with regards to little Miss Karis. And for everyone out there, this is SG Anon. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. Please do check out, excuse me, DS, I apologize, DS Karis, I believe, dsrkarisconsulting.com. So that's DSRKARIS consulting.com for more information. I'll be back with each of you again soon. Mr. Richardson, Miss Kaysha, thank you for joining me today. And for everyone out there, this is SG Anon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.